I'm going to talk to you about transitioning to a volatile and uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. And I've heard the word transition like 5 times today, so it's kind of a hot topic. Right? So it's kind of funny that I'm in the middle of the day, between the morning session and the afternoon, so I'm right in the middle of transition. Right? So, and this is basically my presentation. This is basically my message, that we are, the current collective quality of thinking is not suitable for the future that we want to create. Right? And I'm going to link this to Danielle's presentation this morning, where you mentioned that the paradigm shift, right? And I was kind of scared this morning because I thought, oh my God, he's going to talk about everything that I'm going to talk about today. No, but you kind of opened the Pandora's box. Now we're going to dive very deep. And Ines, you mentioned that, I think it was in the end of your presentation that you mentioned that what is the work of the heart? So stay tuned. My last slide is about the work of the heart, I think. So in order to understand what I mean with this, what is our current and collective way of thinking? Okay? So to understand this, we need to travel back in time. Alright? So where are we going? We're going to the Middle Ages. Okay? So this is the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of civilization, the end of civilization. You have to imagine that today, right, or in 200 years, the internet is over. Okay? Airplanes are no longer there. No one writes books anymore. All of the knowledge that we have today, poof, disappears. People don't write anymore. People don't even know how to think straight. They don't even know how to add 1 and 2 together. That was the fall of the Roman Empire. That was the fall of civilization. And for about 1,000 years, this is how we lived. Right? Let's call this, and I'm really summarizing a lot here, but let's call this the age of mysticism, right? Where we all believe that we are not under control of anything. Gods are under control of everything. If you wanted to know if someone is guilty of a crime, you just throw them in the river. If he drowns, then, well, must be he was guilty. Now, this is true. It was a time where it was believed that women had fewer teeth than men. Nobody considered counting them. Right? So, until these guys come along. By the way, who knows all 5 of them? Raise your hands if you know all 5 of them. Who knows 1? Right. Not bad. So, who are these guys? These guys are basically the founders. The founders. These are the founders. These are the founders of the modern world. Right? These guys created basically, well, everything that we have today. In this room, everything can be traced back to one of these guys. These guys made something incredible because they didn't only, oh, Jesus. Forget it. I lost it completely. So these guys not only created the ideas behind it, but they created something extremely powerful, which is the mathematics that allow us to take the ideas and make predictions about the future. So what this meant was, and Newton and Maxwell, for example, Newton responsible for understanding the laws of motion. He created a whole branch of mathematics, calculus, that most university students hate. And Maxwell created the laws of electromagnetism that run our cell phones and our beautiful technology. Right? And these guys had a worldview. They created a killer app, which was reductionism. The idea that to understand a complex problem, all you need to do is tear it apart, right? Analyze it, understand it piece by piece, create a mathematical model, put it back together, and now you can not only understand what it did, but what it will do in the future. That's the end of gods. Now we are the gods. Now we are in control, right? So that's reductionism that has been following us to the day. This is our current way of thinking, reductionism, right? Galileo, philosophy is written in this grand book, the universe, which stands continually open to our gaze. It is written in the language of mathematics, and its characters are triangles, circles, and other geometric figures, without which one wanders about in the dark labyrinth. This is a bold statement, right? But compared to what we had in the Middle Ages, okay? This guy over here. Check out. I have described the Earth and the whole visible universe in a matter of a machine. This is the paradigm of thought that we have to the day that created the modern world. And it was brilliant because it was thanks to this idea that you could understand and predict, right, a complex problem that we've managed to, well, take a lot of people out of hunger, that we've escaped disease. Okay, we still have diseases today, but compared to the Middle Ages, right? So you have to keep thinking about the Middle Ages, right? We eradicated disease. We eradicated poverty. Right? So what they created was the idea and the mechanisms to understand the world as a stable and unchanging and a system in equilibrium. However, what's this? Right? Alright, so yeah, makes sense, right? Reduce everything to its fundamental parts, understand it. But then we have events like these. And by the way, I don't think that our understanding of complexity today is heightened because it's staring in our face, right? But it has always been there. Like World War I, World War II, the Great Depression are great examples of how a system quickly evolved into chaos. In World War I, a single bullet caused the deaths of 60 million people and destroyed Europe. So I don't necessarily agree that this complexity is something new. Complexity has always been there. Now it's just hitting us in the face because of our interconnectivity, about how fast information flows, right? So you might have noticed that Back to the Future was my favorite movie, right? Growing up. So I like to think, okay, so where do we have to go back, right? If I could go back, where would I go to change the timeline, right? So that this machine view that we have of the world today is no longer the standard model, but it's the old model, right? And curiously, we don't have to go very far from where Newton and Maxwell did. Let's go back to Paris, 1885. The Eiffel Tower was just built as a prototype of, okay, this is the modern world. We control structure, we control the metals, we can do things like that. And the idea was back then, well, mathematics can actually predict everything, right? Newton's laws were being applied to everything. Newton's laws built the Eiffel Tower. And there were these two guys over there who studied mathematics over here. You might know that one, Laplace, right? Famous mathematician, brilliant mathematician. And he was looking into almost like a hobby, okay? All right, let's take Newton's equations and solve what is called the three-body problem, right? Which is basically trying to predict the orbits of the planet. Nothing more stable than that, right? The planets are there moving all around, right? So we should be able to apply Newton's very straightforward equations to predict the motion of the sun, the earth, and the moon, right? And, well, it's supposed to be a solution, huh? He eventually died and never found it. This guy over there, Henri Poincaré, also French, well, when the past time he said, no, okay, I'm not going to go with it, but also a brilliant mathematician, but he tried it a different way. He said, all right, So instead of finding a solution, I'm going to first prove that there is a solution, right? And there is a mathematical way to tackle this problem. So instead of solving it, first you try to prove, okay, there is a solution, yes or no, right? And what he found in 1889, no, there is no solution. So the mathematics told him, no, there is no solution. Actually, there are infinite solutions. It is actually very likely, or it is possible, that if the Earth and Jupiter and Venus and whatever are in a slightly different position, the whole solar system just collapses. And back then the reaction was, well, this is probably just a mistake because we all see the sun and the star, they're moving, this is nothing. What he found was a crack in the building of the modern science. What he found was that actually the stability that we take for granted is actually very unstable. That it is possible that a system can very quickly turn into chaos. A dynamical system can very quickly turn into chaos, like was the case in World War I. So this is the root of complexity theory. This is the root of chaos. And if I had to go back, I would sit Mr. Porto, hey, listen, you need to take this seriously, right? You're really onto something. I know it's disconcerting, but you are absolutely right. This is how the world works. And maybe today, instead of that picture that I showed you before, we would have this one over there. These are all the people that I consider to be the founding fathers of the postmodern science, of the new science, right? I'm not going to ask you if you know these ones, because I didn't know them a year ago. So Poincaré you already know. I guess Schrödinger you also do, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics. By the way, little known fact, but Schrödinger wrote a book in the end of his life about life. And it was his book that inspired James Watson, to go and look for a DNA molecule, which eventually he did. Mr. Mandelbrot over there, the father of fractal geometry. Has anyone heard of fractal? Fractal geometry? No? No? Coast of England, cauliflower thing? Mandelbrot, Lyapunov, poor bastard, he died, he killed himself after World War I. That guy was a genius, a pure genius. He solved an impossible mathematical problem back in the days where there was no internet, there was no nothing, right? And he put a number into chaos, right? Lawrence, famous meteorologist, a climatologist, he discovered the butterfly effect. So, there we go. Now, what's happening right now? The thing is, the current worldview we have today is only half truth, right? So we study in school and in the university to become experts in complicated problems, right? Like we try to reduce everything to either simple problems or complicated problems. We study to become experts in complicated problems. But you're missing 50% of the story, that most of the systems that are not man-made are complex and chaotic. So there's a whole 50% of the story that we're missing out. And that explains that slide with the dancing Donald Trump. And I like to call this the era of holism. Some of you might link this to this new age bullshit. But holism in the sense that the total is indeed much, much greater than the sum of its parts. Oh my God. Now what? What does this mean? Does this mean that we're all wrong? Well, I like to think yes. We're all wrong, man. We're all very wrong. Wrong in the sense that if we think that what we know, or the models that we take to predict the world are the only thing that are there, then you're definitely wrong. It's like that story of the guy who is in the streets, and there are street lights looking for the keys. And the policeman comes and says, what are you looking for? I'm looking for the keys. Why you lost them? Yes, where? I don't know. Then why are you standing there? Because it's the only place I have light. Right? So in that case, yes, we are wrong. But we are incomplete. And there are lots of things that you can do right now. If this makes you a little bit anxious into understanding the world, there are a couple of things that you can do to when you go back home. One of them is look this up that Danielle mentioned, right? System science. So this is a very basic thing. Go to Google or YouTube and watch a few videos on the system science, right? It will make you feel, oh, right, this makes perfect sense. I feel that stable and static systems are completely dead. And we need to learn, well not learn, because I think we intuitively know this, right? That most of the nice systems work with feedback loops and on archetypes, and very standard archetypes. The next thing you need to Google is complexity science and network science, right? These words need to enter your vocabulary like in your everyday, slowly, right? Don't take this all in, or you're going to a depression, right? Take it slowly, right? Complex adaptive systems, emergence, chaos, fundamental unpredictability. And this is a tricky one, right? Fundamental uncertainty. And this goes, you've been asking a lot about personal development stuff, right? And I know you're into this. And for me, the most important thing to understand in these new science is this fundamental uncertainty, that we cannot predict the future, that we cannot in any way say what will happen tomorrow, not even in our own lives. And the moment we accept this, okay, yes, life is an adventure, okay, all the anxiety disappears. The third one, which I kind of added this in late, actually today, non-linear scaling and tipping points, because I've been hearing a lot about growth, and scale. And we really need to really think about whether you want your systems to really grow and scale. Because when systems grow and scale, complex systems grow and scale exponentially and quickly out of control, and they really come back to bite you. Right? 3 problems that I personally like, I don't like this, of course, that I personally am interested in, is applying complexity systems or complexity thinking to problems like wildfires. I'm not interested very much in the fire itself, but the whole system, right, that leads to a catastrophic wildfire, which includes answering the question, why do people live in the central of Portugal to go live in the big cities, right? Why do people plant eucalyptus tree, right? The second problem, I think, is the future of work. That everybody will be involved. If we survive the next 50 years, everybody will somehow be involved with this, which is climate change and emerging behavior. I added emerging behavior because I took that picture actually in the website. What's the most important thing for saving the planet? Revolutionizing consumer behavior. I absolutely agree. But how do you fucking revolutionize consumer behavior? You need to understand emergence. You need to understand how people get together, right, following very simple individual rules and create these patterns of consumption. And finally, one I am deeply involved in is social upheaval and polarization. Right? We live in this paradoxical time when we're all interconnected, but we're all polarized. We're all against each other. Right? And this is true not only in South Sudan, where I'm working with, it's true in the United States, it's true in Europe, it's true in China. And this could lead to World War III, together with climate change. So, whether you like it or not, reductionism is dead. Dead. The future belongs to those who can accept and understand that we are part of this brilliant, complex adaptive system. And finally, if you don't want to go into Google and dive into complexity theory, my suggestion is learn how to dance.